This is the Ask Faleskini podcast, where the modern economy is discussed from a skeptic's perspective. Mr. Faleskini helps you distinguish what is sustainable in our economy and what isn't. Not everything that glitters is gold, and not all mud is dirty. The podcaster Mr. Faleskini provides no-nonsense advice. He had it all, lost it all, went bankrupt multiple times, and is now attempting to come back from zero with sustainable growth. There are numerous coaches and preachers on the internet that preach about positive thinking and how life is all roses if you just care to see it that way. Well, Mr. Faleskini is definitely not one of them. We recommend you ask Faleskini to keep it real. He discusses the darker side of the current economic reality, the side that's more important for your personal and business finance. His first intention is to help you keep what you already have. Not to be a complete party pooper, Mr. Faleskini will also hint at the earning opportunities in the economy today. In order to please the almighty algorithm, please like, share, and subscribe. And now it's time to start taking notes. The mic goes to the podcaster, the one and only Mr. Faleskini.
Welcome to the Ask Faleskini podcast with a guest. I'm proud to present Femi Opaneye from Bali, Indonesia. Femi graduated from UK Law School in 2002. Then worked for close to a decade in law and investment banking. Today, Femi is a serial entrepreneur, currently serving as a founder and CEO of Pane Ventures, a startup advisory firm that specializes in two main areas: customer acquisition and fundraising. Femi, please tell us about yourself. What is your story?
Hey, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate you having me on the podcast, and thank you for your time. So I would say, in terms of my story and my background, I originally started off in law. I didn't like it. In some ways, I was maybe conditioned to go into that area because I didn't know what else to do. After that, I went into investment banking. I was working in that field for close to a decade, as you mentioned. Now, I would say that the corporate world just wasn't for me. And in some respects, I have described myself as a terrible employee. But one thing I would say is that I couldn't continue that way because there was no direction in my life. And so that's why I quit in September 2014. And I kind of fell into entrepreneurship because I had no idea what else to do. And I would say that I jumped off a cliff and I found my wings on the way down because I had to learn about the different aspects of business ideas, growing a business, sales, marketing. And I worked in a bunch of different industries until I decided to found Pane Ventures in March 2020. And as you stated, we help our clients in two main areas. That's customer acquisition and in fundraising.
I would really like to know, did you start your entrepreneurial journey in UK or in Bali?
Actually, that's a very good question. I was actually in Hong Kong. So I was in Hong Kong from 2010 until 2017. Now, what happened, as I stated to you, is that I was working in investment banking at that time. I just got sick of complaining, right? It was every day complaining, oh, I hate this job, I want to do something else. And I did that for many, many years. I would say to my mom, hey, I don't like this. What should I do? And she would just say that, hey, this is life. This is work. And so I continued that for many, many years. Eventually, I said, you know what? I'm just going to hand in my resignation and I'm going to figure it out. And that's what I did. Now, before I continue, I wouldn't recommend that everyone does that. That's not what I'm saying. But I quit while I was in Hong Kong. And so I worked as an entrepreneur for 3 years in Hong Kong. Then I went to the UK for 3 years. And I've been in Bali for the past 3 years.
Okay. Thank you very much for this insight. I think it's really important because I watched a lot of your videos on YouTube. You recently started your YouTube channel. and you're sharing
That's right.
insights on what's going on with funding and how entrepreneurs should search for funding, and that not everyone would get 100 million in funding or even a billion in funding when in the startup phase. Can you let us know, did you work in private banking or in investment banking, as you said? Did you work also in areas of finding and funding startups, or did you work in any other area?
So when I was working in investment banking, as I said, my background was in law. So the area that I sat in was in between the legal department and the front office. So essentially what I used to do is negotiate ISDA agreements for the front office so they could trade derivatives. Now, for those that don't know what ISDA is, it stands for the International Swaps and Derivatives Association. Again, it probably won't ring a bell, but if you go and watch the movie Margin Call, they talk about ISDAs. And essentially what these are bespoke contracts between two counterparts. So two banks will agree to trade derivatives, and the ISDA is used to govern the trade between them. So just to go back to what you said, yes, I started a YouTube channel around about 2 months ago. And essentially the purpose of the YouTube channel is to educate my clients, educate potential clients, educate my audience in general. Now, I'm 43, and I didn't get my first mobile phone until I was 20. And so for me, the social media thing, it didn't come easy to me. And so for many years, I actually avoided social media for a very, very long time. But I have to say, starting my YouTube channel, talking about these different subjects, because it's not just funding, it's the entire scope of startups. So everything from business ideas to sales to marketing to funnels to general things about the startup industry. So, for example, my most recent video, which is actually one of my most successful, is on Sam Bankman-Fried and the collapse of FTX. Now, this is just me giving commentary about the situation. Now, he, as we know, he lost about 10 to 50 billion when the platform collapsed. And I'm giving commentary about this situation because I think being an entrepreneur, it's not just about these different areas, but also things that we can learn from other people who have become entrepreneurs themselves. So he became a very successful entrepreneur very quickly, and we can see his downfall very quickly. So there is a lesson in that, and that's what I'm talking about on my YouTube channel.
You also mentioned in one of other videos that not everyone will raise 100 millions or 50 millions, and that this is not so important as to raise the first 100,000, 300,000, and that takes enormous pressure off the funders. So they don't work for free anymore, or they don't work for a minimal paycheck anymore. They can have a normal paychecks and they can develop normally. So that also takes a lot of pressure off them. Could you elaborate a bit on that? Why it's important? Why it's more important to have a normal paycheck than to have 50 million on your company's bank account?
Yeah, that's right. So I've also released a book, which is in conjunction to the YouTube channel, but the book focuses more on, well, it's entitled Meet Active and Verified Investors, and it talks about fundraising. And actually, this is a free ebook, which anyone can download either from my website or from my link tree. All you have to do is click the link. You don't need to provide us with your email address. Don't worry, no, we're not going to spam you. Click the link and you can read about it. But essentially, what I'm trying to say to people is that, in fact, it takes or you should keep in mind that it can take 7 to 10 years to build a successful startup. And as Michael Seibel from Y Combinator always says, there is a 99.9% chance of failure, when it comes to this startup game. I mean, I think a lot of people have got this twisted because they see in places like TechCrunch, they see on Forbes, so Forbes 30 under 30, for example, that all of these people are raising a lot of money. You go on Crunchbase, and I think a lot of them, founders, they get discouraged when they see, oh my God, this person has raised 10 million. This person has raised 20 billion. This person has raised, 20 million, 50 million. You know, all of these amounts. But actually, a lot of these companies are outliers, right? And I would say that a lot of them perhaps have either good connections or they went through a good accelerator. So that is a tip for you. If you don't have connections to investors, then you should join a good accelerator. And it's important that it is the right accelerator, not just any accelerator. But as you rightly pointed out, the early stages, it's a lot easier to raise money. So, for example, from friends and family, from angel investors, etc., because they are not sophisticated, they're not professional investors. So they're not going to ask for detailed documentation. They're not going to ask you to prove as much as you would later on down the line. And so therefore, it's important to raise some type of capital. I mean, look, you mentioned 100, you mentioned 300, even if you could raise 10, 15,000, a grant or something like that, something to keep you going. Because actually what happens with a lot of people is that a lot of founders, they have a good business, but maybe they run out of money. They can't pay their rent. So what do you expect them to do? They have to quit their startup. They have to go back to the corporate world. Or something you can do is have your startup as your side hustle, as they say, and still maintain your corporate job or some kind of side hustle that you're doing. Maybe work for another startup as you're working for your startup so that you can keep your dream alive. Otherwise, it's going to be a difficult road ahead because imagine saying to your landlord, hey, I'm working on this brilliant idea. Can I pay my rent in 6 months? The answer is probably going to be no.
Yes. You mentioned grants. In UK, we have a whole series or a really wide choice of grants. So there are government grants, there are R&D refunds. There are really numerous ways that you can get your initial funding, talking about a couple of thousand, maybe 100,000. But what would you say is this startup world and financing and joint ventures and venture capitalists, is this getting too complex? What's your take on that?
So first of all, to answer your first question about grants. So when it comes to grants, the government, so whether that be on the local level or the more central level, they have a vested interest in your business succeeding. And also charities as well that can also provide grants. They don't do as much means checking, right, into your startup. Or even I should mention your regular high street bank. You can go to them and get 10, 15,000 pounds. They don't do as much means checking as they would a VC. And the reason that a VC tends to do that is that VCs, which are professional investors, they also have investors that they must answer to, right? So therefore, they are much more strict with their criteria when it comes to giving money to startups. And so therefore, it's important that, look, if you can get a grant, I highly, highly recommend that you do it because some of these grants will run into the hundreds of thousands as well. Now, the VC game, like I said, I mean, it's a very, very complicated area. And, you know, it's a club in many respects. So if you know the right people, then you can raise a certain amount of capital, certainly a lot of capital. Or if you have the right connections, yes, that will lead to you raising a lot of capital. But if you don't, I still think that, for example, customer acquisition So getting more clients is also a good way to grow your startup. And then later on down the line, when they see that from a financial perspective, that you do have monthly recurring revenue or annual recurring revenue, then it becomes easier to approach investors for your Series A, B, C, D, etc. Raise.
Okay, you mentioned right people and right connections in order to get money. Would you call this VC game rigged?
Again, complicated. In some respects, yes. And the reason I say that, but I think a lot of life in some ways is, right? So for example, if my father worked in finance, it would be easier for me to raise capital, right? Or if I had friends and family that did as well, then it's easier for me let me say it that way, to raise capital. And some people, so for example, Sam Bankman-Fried, he had the right connections. His parents are Stanford law professors. They have a lot of political connections. So this smoothed the way for him to grow FTX very quickly. Now, other people, as I said, they don't have these kind of connections. They may not have connections in Silicon Valley. And so that's why I said, look, as a workaround, if you do want to grow your business and you're passionate about your startup, again, that's very important, because if you're not making money in your startup, you can be discouraged when VCs say no to you. So go and get grants. Go to charity organizations. Go to work on your customer acquisition until you get to the point where you can get funding from VCs. Is the game rigged? Yes. Is life rigged as well? Yes. But if you lay down and you don't take a stand for what you want, then you're never going to get what you want out of life. You just have to work with what you have. And I would say that that's the best way to play this game.
Okay, so I'll rewind. I'll go a couple of decades back, and in the 80s, the mainstream advice was make money, make more money, then invest, then make more money, and then invest. And right now, I'm confident to say that mass media or mainstream media always propagate, get a VC, get funding, and then you will be big. Mm-hmm. What's your take on that? Because I'm more conservative on that. I do believe that startups should be cash flow positive, and they should grow from their own cash flow. Why would you need external funding to grow something, especially all these apps and programming and all these services? Why would you need funding for that? You just need to, as you would say, get new clients, and you can grow from your cash flow. Why do you think that in the last 2 decades everything is about getting outside funding and then leverage it as much as possible and make huge profit for the investors? And why wouldn't the funders have money from themselves, and they should just make, let's say, profitable business so that they have a nice paycheck and some money on the side? Because all these mainstream stories, Sam Bankman made 2 billion in 3 years and everything was great. He didn't make 2 billion. His company was valued at 2 billion by the evaluators that don't have the slightest clue what was inside. So it was valued similarly as you would value, let's say, how would I address that? Like you would purchase a lottery ticket and say, my lottery ticket is value as the biggest reward I can get. And that is how they evaluated Sam Bankman, FTX. He purchased a lottery ticket, and they said, okay, this lottery ticket is now in our books valued as the biggest reward we can get. What's your take on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to answer your question directly, in one word, it's greed, right? That is the whole point. People want, or a lot of investors, a lot of VCs, they want 100x returns, and they want it as soon as possible. And there is this, there's been this creation of this house of cards, which will eventually burst. I mean, like most bubbles do. And as you said, yes, we go back decades, and it was about customer acquisition, right? So get one customer, I get two customers, get three, get four, and retain that customer. You know, you're talking about customer retention, serving your clients well so that they stay with you for a longer period of time. You can build that relationship, and they go from purchasing a product which is worth, let's say, $1,000 a week or per month to 10,000. And that's how you grow organically over time. Now, that's the best situation to happen, right? And I personally believe that that is the way that all businesses should grow, and also always should think about growing. And so therefore, I would say to people as well that, look, just because you don't raise capital, it doesn't mean that you're running a bad startup. Focus on the core business, focus on your product, focus on serving your customers well, and grow that way. Because the thing is, when you raise capital, you have to give away a piece of your business, and you have to be beholden to those investors. Because if I were to give you money, for example, I want my money back. And so therefore, why would I not be saying to you, hey, maximize profits as much as possible? Now, in certain situations, it does work, right? Over time, the money that is raised can be used to grow the company. So, for example, improve the product, hire the right staff, and then eventually we're hoping that the company does become profitable on its own merit. But what we're seeing is a slew of startups that are able to raise a lot of capital, but are not profitable. And that is the bubble that I'm talking about. And again, it seems to be the way that things are going. I mean, of course, it needs to stop, but things like FTX will happen. So not just FTX. So we're not just talking about Sam Bankman-Fried. I've also made a video on Adam Neumann and the collapse of WeWork. I think the CEO of SoftBank got fired for that. We're talking about, fortunately, or unfortunately, he never went to prison because they never found any wrongdoing. But if you look at his story, you will see that he was very excessive in his spending. And essentially, the company died. They couldn't save it. We also talk about Liz Holmes, who is currently serving 11 years. There's another lady called Charlie Jarvis. She sold her company to JP Morgan for $175 million. She is currently on trial. So these are the things that come with raising money. It is not, these guys will come for you if you are fraudulent, because your actions are just, okay, profit. I want to make as much money as possible. And as you said, and I looked at it yesterday because a friend was asking me about it. On paper, Sam Bankman-Fried was worth $22.5 billion at one point. And now he is facing 115 years in jail. Is he going to serve that amount of time? Probably not, because there are a lot of, it's highly political behind the scenes. And he's probably going to cut a very good deal. But I highly encourage people, work on your product, work on your team, work on the relationship with your co-founders, and build a good business, build a good product, and don't focus on always raising capital. Focus on the core features that make a business profitable.
Okay, so many advices, but I would like to challenge you one more time. Is there anything else you would like our listeners to take from this interview? Any specific tip, any trade secret that you can share?
Yes. So I would say that some things that have been very helpful for me are, in fact, let me give numerous. You have to be very honest with yourself. Now, it's very difficult to do that. And so what I would recommend is that you get a coach, someone that is, and make sure it's a good coach as well, because there are a lot of coaches out there that are actually not that good. So it has to be a very good coach that can reflect back what you're saying and can be honest with you, right? If you're paying this person, then it's important that they're honest about what you're saying to them. So if you're saying something that's incorrect, they can help you. And maybe they can also help you with your mental health because, and again, this gets into the health aspect of things. A lot of people focus on their startup. They focus on profit. They focus on making money, but not many people focus on their health. So, for example, you might have high blood pressure, but you say, okay, well, this is the this is my penalty for growing a successful business. Well, are you going to live long enough to see the business successful? So get a coach, focus on your mental health, focus on your health itself, make sure you have people in your corner that can be there for you, someone that you can talk to if it is not a coach, because I think a lot of people are actually very lonely, because being an entrepreneur is very lonely. The reason I say that is that actually as an entrepreneur, you live in your mind, or some people say in your head a lot, and you have to solve all of these complex problems. And a lot of people are telling you will not succeed. A lot of people are telling you no as well. And so therefore, it is very important to have someone that you can turn to, someone that you can rely on. And also make sure you get very good information. So I mentioned Y Combinator before. Now, their information is proven as well. I've been through, if you can't go through the accelerator, go through their startup school, which is free. They also put out a lot of free content. Finally, I would say subscribe to my YouTube channel for more useful and insightful content.
Okay, I will ask you for all these links so I can put them in the description below. And thank you, Femi, for being my guest tonight.
Thank you. It was an honor.
Thank you, Mr. Faleskini, for this outstanding podcast. And thank you for listening to the Ask Faleskini podcast until the end. Mr. Faleskini would love to hear your feedback in the comments. And don't forget, if you want to know, ask Faleskini or listen to the Ask Faleskini podcast. In order to please the almighty algorithm, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.